Put simply, dropships move to their destination and then act. This action may be to attack or to deploy. You might have your gunners attack, or you may fight yourself if you pilot weapon-enabled craft. Or you may deploy troops, yourself, or assets such as nanohives or uplinks. Any action requires you choose the appropriate altitude and approach to maximize your effectiveness. When it's time to leave or evade, you must do the same. Pick the best way to use altitude to your advantage. This is what we're going to look at in this video. I'll cover the basics in the first 3 minutes of the video. For experienced pilots, this will be something you already know, but hang on through it so you're familiar with the terms I'll be using later on, and also so you know what it is and what it's like, so that you can point your new pilot friends at it later on. The two most important considerations are the effective weapon elevation and depression of those you're about to engage, and also their range. These determine if they're able to hit you. If you can't be hit, then you're not at risk. Weapon elevation and depression determine how much into the sky or down at the ground a weapon can be pointed. Take this infantry player. He can point his gun directly up, giving him 90 degrees of elevation. He can also point it directly down, giving him 90 degrees of depression. Since he can rotate 360 degrees, he's able to cover the entire sky, including directly above it. Anywhere you go in the red zone, he can hit you if he's got the range. This tank, however, and these are sample elevations as they change each build, has 45 degrees of elevation. This means this tank is able to shoot anywhere in this 45-degree arc where his turret's pointed. Since a tank's turret can turn 360 degrees, that 45-degree arc extends around the whole tank, creating a 360-degree, 45-degree elevation threat zone. As you can see, this leaves you a safe zone above the tank, which you don't get with infantry. This is where weapon range has to be factored in. Take the infantry player. That circle is the range of his maximum range anti-vehicle weapon, so anywhere inside that is a threat zone, which I'll colour red. This guy's a Minamata, not Japanese. I'll try a different red. This is the ground here. Remember that your target may be on an elevated ground, so it can shoot down at you from above. Get too low or close, and he can hit you anywhere you are around him in this circle. When flying directly above the player at high enough altitude, you're completely safe from his weapons. But if he's only armed with a medium-range weapon, such as a plasma cannon, you can cross the long-range border as long as you stay out of plasma range. Do that and you'll be safe. If the infantry only have grenades, you can get closer still and still remain safe. If they have no AV weapons at all, you can pretty much choose any altitude you want. This is where knowing what AV weapons exist, which are on the field, and what their ranges are, can help determine your altitude. If the infantry are armed with a range of AV weapons, the closer you get, the more exposed to damage you become. The next factor is the range of your weapons. Each weapon type has a different range. These will likely change in each build, so I won't detail them here. I'll do a separate and changing video for that, just so it remains current. The altitude you choose is a combination of your target's weapon range and yours. Here I'm using missiles and my target has grenades. If I hover here, I can hit him, but he can't hit me. This is the key factor in choosing your altitude to engage. Let's look at how to use elevation and range in battle. In this example, I'm very low, putting me in range of even the shortest range AV weapons. This enemy here starts running at me. It's extremely likely he's going to try to get in range to throw grenades. I go up just enough that I get out of his range, but not so much that he's out of mine. But as you see, not enough to get out the range of the swarmer under the warehouse, who starts to hit me. You've seen this clip before, but what you most likely didn't notice was these. They are from this guy. Let's zip forward and find him. Ah, there he is. Who's standing here? Well, I'm here. I'm very low shooting this sniper as he has no AV. I'm just outside of the forge gun's range, so it's safe for me to stay in the open like this and fight. When fighting infantry, this is a good height. I am out the range of their short-range AV, but still able to kill them. While this is a good height if you have shorter range weapons, and it is easy to kill from this height, you are at risk from crashing into the buildings around you if you're hit by AV. I recommend this height, as not only does it give you a safety margin should you get hit with longer range, stronger AV that may knock your ship about, but it keeps you from their field of view. I'll go into more detail on field of view later in this video. In these clips I'm using altitude to my advantage. I'm low enough to reduce my exposure to AV further away, but not too low to be in danger from grenades or gunfire directly below me. As a side note, I'd appreciate it if you'd pretend you didn't see how bad my shooting was there. Jeez. Where elevation really matters is when fighting tanks. Choosing the correct altitude is critical to success. Let's look at 2 attacks on tanks. In this first fight, I'm too low. I've let myself drop into the tank's elevation threat zone and it easily destroys me. In this example, I follow the tank but remain above him so that I'm outside of the threat zone. He cannot hit me, so tries to run, which was never going to work. Here I'm too low and in the elevation threat zone. The tank is able to hit me. The correct response is not to climb straight up or to turn to try to escape, but to fly up and towards the tank. This gets you into the safe zone as quick as possible, and then as you leave on the other side of the tank, while you escape, he has to turn his turret all the way around to follow you. We covered how to do drops and dives in video 4, so now let's put them to use. There are many variations on what I'm about to discuss, so I'll cover just the main techniques for using altitude to approach ground forces. I'll focus on attack and cover deployment of troops, uplinks, nano hives, and any other assets in another video. At its most simplistic, there are only 3 variations of altitude approach, either from high altitude, from low altitude, or from the level. We have a drop approach, which uses the maneuvers from video 4, drops and dives, and we have the rise approach, which uses climbs from video 3, like the URF and straight climb. Lastly, there's a level approach, which includes hovers and the maneuvers from videos 1 and 2, slides, rolls, and any form of directional flight. Let's start with high altitude approaches, dropping onto a target from above. The simplest way to attack is to use your ability to get to a high altitude to avoid being seen completely, or to drop from your enemy's battle risk assessment. By being up high, you may be well out of your target's field of view, so they will remain unaware of your position and intentions. Or they may see you, but consider you to be a non-threat, so you're too high to hit them. This is why we learned to twist and D-stops and dives in video 4. They allow you to lose altitude at maximum speed and drop onto a target below you quickly, giving you the advantage. Here I drop from very high, well out of the battle risk assessment of the ground forces below. They'll be focused on the ground troops surrounding them and will likely have never seen me coming. However, this has its risks. I'm totally exposed this high. There was no cover, and I was vulnerable to anyone who has a long-range weapon. At that altitude, that would most likely be tanks or installations. On a map like this was not the best approach. I used it because it was at the end of the match, and I knew what threats were on the field. One of the most useful maneuvers to reduce this exposure while climbing and approaching from high altitude is the pillar climb, followed by dives. Pillar climbs are using tall objects, such as this tower, and doing a straight climb to the top while keeping close to the structure and keeping the pillar between you and the target. This helps to block incoming fire, or to keep you hidden so as to maintain an element of surprise. Here the enemy is on the other side of this tower, so I use a pillar climb to gain altitude. This helps me remain completely unseen and safe from attack. At the top, I'm completely invisible to the infantry below. A vertical dive with a twist stop drops me right behind them quickly, limiting my exposure and letting me take them by surprise. In this example, I'm engaging ground forces when they start to swarm me. I use a nearby pillar to avoid their fire and to gain altitude safely. I can then come back at them from over the top of the building and drop onto their position using a dive and a D-stop. This is why you must master your steep dives and your stops. The other way to attack from high altitude using pillars is to climb a distant pillar and use a high-speed shallow dive and do a strafe attack. The video seems to have stopped for no reason whatsoever. Let's move on, we don't need to see the end of this clip. I think you get the idea. Damn it. Remember, when you dive, to pay attention. The speed you gain can make pulling up slower than you expected. It catches everybody out. This limited selection is the best way to attack from altitude. Pillars let you gain altitude safely, and steep dives let you attack quickly and surprise your targets. While advanced stops like the D and the twist let you stop at the bottom of your dive in a stable enough position for accurate fire. If you have no idea what I'm on about with twist stops and dives, they're covered in video 4, so pop back and give it a watch if you haven't already seen it. Opposite to the high altitude drop approaches are low altitude and level approaches. Dropships are fast, and the lower they are, the harder they are to track. Terrain and structures break lock-ons and make aiming at you harder when you're low and fast. A lower approach can keep you out of your enemy's battle risk assessment, in the same way that a very high altitude approach using a dive does. Using terrain and structures to mask your location and approach vector lets you approach unseen, even when you're in a very large, noisy ship close to the ground. In this example, I'm going to attack a group of 3 enemies hiding here, as my team is complaining about them. But with that tank, who's looking the wrong way and hasn't seen me yet, I have to move, and going high will make me visible and vulnerable to the tank as soon as he turns my way. So I use a low approach to flank round behind them, and also to escape the tank. There are buildings and slight terrain changes that I know I can use to my advantage to surprise the group I'm going for and to hide from the tank at the same time. As I get behind these buildings, I'm completely out of sight. If I stay low enough, I can even use these low buildings to hide my approach. The group is just here. We do surprise them, and they scatter into the line of sight of my team over on the ridge there, and my gunner goes to town on them too. When approaching low, try to keep yourself shielded from your enemy as much as you can with terrain and structures, and use high speed to make tracking you hard. A key tool for the low approach is the aerial only zone. Each map has a zone that only aerial vehicles can use at the edge. Often these zones have terrain that you can use to flank your enemy. In this example, I used the map edge zone and keep below it as I flank behind my enemy. I was safe and I was able to surprise them. This can be combined with pillar climbs to combine the advantages of a low approach with those of a high dive attack. It's difficult for your enemy to predict where and when you will reappear when you disappear behind a ridge. Rise approaches are a way to end a low approach. Pillar climbs and dives offer a way to stage your high altitude attacks. The cover and surprise elements they offer are what make them useful. A similar method that is not dependent on going high is a rise approach. This approach is a way of using terrain and structures to pop up, often from below your target, or out from cover. It's a way to come up on your targets unseen and thus reduce your exposure to risk. Here I fly in low and fast below the building's roof levels, and rise up at the end to peer onto the roof. I was told there was a swarmer there. Turns out he was on the ground behind me. Here I rise up from below this sniper, the game's most tunnel vision sniper, as he seems not to have noticed my massive ship, and I shoot him in the face. Then after, my squad orbital his corpse into dust, just for good measure. Who likes snipers, right? Level approaches are simply where your target is at the same height or slightly lower than you. They include level hovers as well as level flight. There are some structures, such as towers with raised walkways, large buildings with cover underneath, and some of the sunken interiors that provide cover to infantry from high altitude attack. In these circumstances you have to approach level to be able to hit them. Because of the pipes above me, I'm flying level with the structures to my front and right, supporting the infantry sweeping the platform. The pipes offer cover to the enemy if I'm higher, like you can see here, but the pipes block my line of view too. However, I'm well in range of AV and small arms fire here. My ship's at risk from getting knocked into nearby structures too, and I'm right in the field of view of my enemies. Here I use a level approach on the forward gunner on the structure. And here I set myself level with the ground units under this warehouse. Being this visible and in line of sight of the enemy is dangerous. AV weapons can knock your ship. The amount of knock is dependent on the weapon that hit you and the speed and direction you have relative to them. Here I get forward while going at full speed. See how much knock there is there. Be careful with hanging low too. This can cost you. Here is an example of how swarm knockback affects a hovering ship. With level approaches, it's easy for your enemy to see you coming and for them to line a shot up on you. Sometimes though, this is desirable. If you're supporting tanks or other ground or air vehicles, then activating your hardeners and deliberately taking hits keeps AV focused on you. This distracts them from flanking troops and vehicles and uses up their ammo. This is what I'm doing here. I do it from high, not level, but that's because I already have their attention. The benefit of starting level means it's easier for you to get their attention. The tank is coming in, so I keep them looking up and wasting their ammo on me, and then leave as the tank rolls in through the front door. This is using altitude to my advantage. The enemy's looking where I want them to and doing what I want. This is how you should use the tactics covered in this video. Get the enemy doing what you want, keep them guessing. Good luck.